The laugh came sharp and loud across the glass conference room, bouncing off chrome and marble like it belonged there more than anyone else did. It was the kind of laugh that cut, the kind that told you exactly where you stood without a single insult needing to be spoken. Marcus stood at the head of the polished table, his worn suit pressed as neatly as he could manage, his hands steady even though his pulse wasn't. Across from him, Victor leaned back in his leather chair, cufflinks glinting, a man who had never had to check the price of groceries or count the miles left in his gas tank. When Marcus said quietly, "I'm your boss," Victor's laughter filled the room. And in that moment, you could almost feel the weight pressing on Marcus's chest. What would you have done if you were standing there? Would you have swallowed your pride and walked away? Or would you have stayed rooted, even when the room felt like it was swallowing you whole? Marcus hadn't always imagined himself in a skyscraper in downtown Chicago, staring down a millionaire who owned half the building. 5 years earlier, he had been in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the South Side, kneeling on the kitchen floor at 2 a.m, trying to scrub formula stains out of the carpet while his infant son, Caleb, cried from a crib missing one screw. The day his wife passed away from a sudden aneurysm, Marcus felt like the world had cracked open and swallowed all the light. Grief didn't come in waves for him, it came like a permanent fog. He was 29, newly widowed, and holding a baby who would never know his mother's laugh. He worked double shifts at a shipping warehouse owned by Victor's company, lifting crates until his back screamed and his fingers bled through cheap gloves. He learned how to warm bottles one-handed while replying to emails on his outdated phone. He learned how to show up to parent-teacher meetings in a uniform that smelled faintly of diesel fuel. He learned how to survive on 4 hours of sleep and the kind of stubborn faith that kept him whispering prayers in the dark when no one else could hear. Victor, on the other hand, had inherited the company from his father, who had built it from scratch. But Victor had never known hunger or eviction notices taped to the door. He drove a silver Aston Martin, hosted charity galas, and spoke about hard work like it was an abstract concept rather than a daily ache in someone's bones. To him, employees were numbers on quarterly reports. Marcus was one of hundreds. The first time Marcus crossed Victor's radar was not because of ambition but because of a mistake. A scheduling error had left Marcus covering 3 routes in one shift. Exhausted, he had misfiled a shipment, costing the company thousands. He had expected to be fired. Instead, he was summoned to headquarters, standing under fluorescent lights, while Victor looked at his file with mild irritation. Victor didn't see the dark circles under Marcus's eyes, or the tiny photo of Caleb tucked into his wallet. He saw inefficiency. He saw replaceable labor. What Victor didn't know was that Marcus had been studying business administration online at night, inching his way through courses after Caleb fell asleep. He used free Wi-Fi outside a closed coffee shop because he couldn't afford home internet. He wrote essays in the front seat of his aging Honda while parked outside daycare. He believed with a quiet intensity that one day he would build something Caleb could be proud of. 2 years after that humiliating meeting, the company hit trouble. Victor had overexpanded, investing heavily in a flashy logistics software startup without fully understanding its flaws. Losses mounted. The board grew restless. Stock prices dipped. Rumors of bankruptcy whispered through the halls. Marcus watched from the warehouse floor as shifts were cut and good people were laid off. Fathers like him, mothers with mortgages and medical bills. He felt that old fog of helplessness creeping back, but this time, something else burned beneath it. He had ideas. He saw inefficiencies Victor ignored. He knew the warehouse systems intimately because he had lived them. So he did something that terrified him. He wrote a proposal. For weeks he worked on it after Caleb fell asleep, now 5 years old and obsessed with dinosaurs. Marcus would read bedtime stories about T-Rexes and then turn to spreadsheets and projections. He mapped out a restructuring plan that focused on internal optimization instead of risky expansion. He outlined cost-saving measures from first-hand experience. He even suggested leveraging regional partnerships rather than national dominance. When he submitted it, he expected silence. Instead, the board called him in. The day of the meeting, Marcus left Caleb with his neighbor, Ruth, an elderly widow who often slipped cookies into Caleb's backpack. He knelt in front of his son before leaving, smoothing his hair and promising to be back before dinner. Caleb looked up at him with unshakable trust. That trust weighed heavier than any boardroom. In the conference room, Victor was already there, irritated that a warehouse supervisor had been invited to what he considered executive territory. When Marcus calmly explained that the board had approved his proposal and appointed him interim CEO to implement it, Victor laughed. He thought it was a joke, a clerical error, an insult to his status. Then the chairman cleared his throat and confirmed it. The silence that followed was not triumphant. It was heavy. Marcus didn't feel powerful. He felt the gravity of responsibility settle onto his shoulders like a lead vest. He thought about the laid-off workers. He thought about Caleb's small hand in his. He thought about the night he had almost given up, sitting in his car after his wife's funeral, wondering how he would raise a child alone. Victor's face shifted from amusement to disbelief, to something close to fear. For the first time, he wasn't the man in control. Taking over was not easy. Executives resisted him. Some quit. Industry analysts mocked the board's decision to place a warehouse guy at the helm. Newspapers speculated about internal chaos. Marcus worked 16-hour days again, but this time in a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Sometimes he would stand there at night, looking at the city lights, and feel like an imposter wearing someone else's suit. But he remembered what it felt like to stand on concrete floors at dawn, loading trucks with aching hands. He remembered colleagues who skipped doctor appointments to afford rent. He remembered praying over overdue bills. Those memories became his compass. He cut unnecessary executive bonuses and reinstated health benefits for hourly workers. He implemented training programs that allowed warehouse staff to move into administrative roles. He negotiated smaller, smarter contracts instead of flashy acquisitions. Slowly, the company steadied. Then it grew. Victor, stripped of his title but still a major shareholder, kept his distance at first. Pride can be a thick wall. But one evening, months later, he lingered outside Marcus's office. He looked older, less polished. He admitted quietly that he had underestimated him. He confessed that he had never really understood the people who kept his empire running. Marcus could have humiliated him. He could have reminded him of the laugh that echoed through that glass room. Instead, he offered him a seat and a chance to contribute meaningfully, not as a king, but as a partner willing to learn. Change did not happen overnight for Victor, but he began visiting warehouses, speaking to workers, listening instead of lecturing. He visited community centers the company now funded, watching children play in after-school programs that hadn't existed before. Something softened in him. Years later, when the company was stronger than it had ever been, Marcus stood in a different conference room during a celebration event. Caleb, now a teenager, towered beside him, proud and steady. Victor approached them, no laughter this time, only respect. He shook Caleb's hand and told him his father had saved more than a company. As the applause filled the room, Marcus's eyes stung. He thought of his wife. He thought of the nights he cried quietly so Caleb wouldn't hear. He thought of the laugh that once tried to reduce him to nothing. If you were in that moment, would you measure success by the corner office or by the people whose lives were quietly changed because you refused to give up? Before this story ends, I want you to comment and share what part of Marcus's journey moved you the most, because sometimes the person others laugh at is the one carrying the heaviest burdens and the strongest faith. Sometimes the single parent working double shifts is also the quiet visionary no one sees coming. And sometimes the most powerful victory is not proving someone wrong, but choosing compassion when you finally have the power to crush them. If this story truly touched your heart, gently consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing, so more people can be reminded that resilience, humility, and second chances still matter in this world.